So we'll start with this Zak Wylde. This is the Xlt model that I'm using. For that fret dress at the neck junction, you can level, crown, and polish and correct all that stuff that the CNC machine misses. And obviously, for the price they charge for a CNC fret dress, you get 2 of those done. You could have bought one of these machines. You got a portable unit you can take anywhere and do 90% of the work that I do on the GPS, the more expensive model. So for $300 less than the GPS, you can still have a tech deck workstation that you'll take care of pretty well everything but the neck surgery and then a complete end-to-end fingerboard level and refret. But we're not wasting any time here. We'll take that out, put a compensated nut in, we're doing a complete fret dress, and as always, you'll get the play-by-play. So Jeff uses an 11 to 48 string tuned to E flat. He's pretty excited about this one. Tons of sustain on this guitar. Ebony fingerboard, maple neck. Look out. And it comes stock with those EMG pickups. I guess they're the signature Zak Wylde pickups, I suppose. This is another super glued nut, so we're not going to mess around with this. We'll get this out super clean and then fit that compensated nut. With a very thin blade, we start by chasing the center line across all 6 strings. So this first very thin blade is like the, it's like the width of a pencil line, about 10 thou. Stepping it up now from 10 thou to 22 thou. Now these are the Japanese saws, so they cut on the pull stroke, which is kind of, if you've never actually used one, it's a pretty neat sensation. You can have a look at that, got that out ultra clean like we should. I've got this Zak Wylde Les Paul and have roughed in the compensated nut blank. So I'm doing these 2 guitars in tandem. This Larrivee guitar that I replaced those first 7 frets and then lightly dressed them down to the height of the original frets. So it's basically back to factory spec. So I'm roughing out both of these compensated nuts and doing them in tandem. This is getting a full treatment and that proverbial fret dress at the neck junction. This one actually kind of went full dress, and of course I'm just getting ready to cut the values in this compensated nut. I know there's been a little bit of confusion amongst my viewers and even some of my students what the difference is between the Xlt model and the GPS model. So what you see here is the Xlt model. Both of these units actually fold up into a case. They're both portable. We've reduced the price by about 40% and the weight by 50%. As you can see, I've got my snap shut containers under there. Now in this case for myself, I've got that self-healing high density foam that I kind of jam my tools into. So the Zak Wylde guitar, this entire job was done on the XLT unit. So this Larrivee guitar is getting similar treatment. There's a compensated saddle in the bridge because the middle two strings were still flat. They needed to come forward, so I had to cantilever that saddle past the original slot to get this to line up. This also has a compensated nut. Now, this is the GPS unit. So it's the multi-adjustable neck assembly, double platforms, pivoting rail, and the neck assembly itself slides along that top rail, and then the individual blocks slide back and forth. We also offer an extra longer block so that you can remove the small block, put two long blocks in when you're doing those long rubbery bass necks. And we also offer a mini neck assembly, which is essentially the same type of assembly with one short block on a short rail, and that's for ukes and mandolins and shorter scale instruments. So the primary difference between the GPS unit and the XLT unit is the neck assembly. The actual case, the body platform, the body straps that you get with it, they are identical. And also, both models, we offer a leather upgrade for $37.75, and pretty well everyone's going for that. It's kind of a no-brainer. And that leather upgrade is the leather pad that goes over the foam on the body platform. Congratulations to Bill Henry from Kingston. Man, he wasted no time using his GPS unit. He was in Toronto in a studio doing fret dresses and setups, and then took a bunch of guitars home with him to Kingston to his own studio. Congratulations, Bill. I can see you're hopping right to it. We are just finishing up this Zak Wylde Gibson signature Les Paul Custom, and just starting into this Gretsch guitar, also compensated nut, fret dress, and setup, and this is also 11 to 48 strings, but this one's actually tuned to concert pitch. So this is a Gretsch Streamliner model. It's almost like Gretsch's answer to the Gibson ES-339, which I had one come in today for a setup. I put a compensated nut on it years ago, and Don just dropped it off for a tweak and a fret dress. And we'll get to that a little later, but for now, as long as the pickup is lower than the frets, then we're good. We'll be able to address that. Well, I've adjusted this neck as straight as I can possibly get it. And this is another argument for removing the nut. Now, we're putting a compensated nut in there anyway. But in order to dress that second fret along the trajectory of the string path, which is the way frets need to be dressed, you need to remove that nut anyway. The second fret, it's high all the way across, and we've got a high spot just on the treble side here, and a high spot from the treble side over to about the A string on that fret. This one, it's the two outside. This fret, it's all the way across, and that's about all that showed up with the smallest straight edge. So here's this spot here. Hear that? This spot here. And this spot, I use a smaller straight edge to kind of hone right in. Hear that ticking? The middle is good, it's just the two outside edges. Here. And the fret is not lifting, it's down tight. It was just never leveled properly. I don't know if this was one of those CNC machines, probably was. No problem, we're going to crack it. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 or 7 spots that need to be dressed. Once again, this is why you need that nut out of the way so that you can go full length along the trajectory of the string path from the nut right to the end of the fingerboard. Now, because this is very soft plastic inlay, that needs to be masked off. Well, this is an example where I prefer the GPS unit because we've got multiple spots along the length of this neck. It's not a spot dress. I got to go full length, so I prefer to have that total neck support and be able to focus it where it's needed. We'll do that little test again in a second, and you'll see all those high spots that I marked. You'll see the tooling marks of the file, a little filing swath across the crown where the high spots were. So I started up at the top of the neck, moving across the radius, but keeping the file straight in line with the strings. Okay, let's check all those spots again. Here, no more ticking. That's it. Got it. Here, got it. Here, got it. That is dead level now. You can see the marks of the file are heavier on that high spot than they are on the 1st and 3rd fret. So you can see where the crown is squared off on all of those high spots that I marked, and then on either side those frets are hardly even touched. Yeah, this one was all the way across, you can see that. This one was on the outside. So now we're ready to recrown and buff this out. This is what the finished frets look like. So now this is perfectly dead level on all 6 strings along the trajectory of the string path. So this is E-flat tuning with 11 to 48 strings. So the compensated nut for this one would be quite a bit different than the compensated nut for this Gretsch Streamliner. The Gretsch is also 11 to 48 strings, but it's tuned to concert pitch. And like I've said to my students, it's a moving target. To do these compensated nuts properly, it's one guitar at a time. So I've got a couple more tech decks. This is a GPS unit going out to Tim Morgan in Missouri, one of my very first Patreon subscribers from a year and a half ago. Congrats, Tim. You're going to have a blast with this thing. The second tech deck is an Xlt, and it's going to Randolph Air Force Base in Texas. So this guitar is a 24 9/16 inch scale length. 11 to 48 strings at concert pitch, and these are the values that were cut into that nut to get all 6 strings to play perfectly in tune. So let's go over to that Gibson guitar. So these bridge saddles weren't even close to being intonated. Now they're perfectly in tune. I did not need to wick Loctite in here because these saddles are good and solid. I did remove that neck pickup in order to dress full length on this one. This is exactly how I orient the guitar when I'm wiring in the electronics cavity. The Les Paul just kind of tucks between the rails. I cinch it down here. It's dead level and brought right up to chest level, so I'm not hunched over to do this wiring. I can stand up straight and get the job done. One last thing I wanted to point out about this Streamer guitar, that headstock is actually resting on the bottom of the case. This is not a good idea. I put a piece of high density foam there so that now it's not touching. So if the case gets a hit, that does not get a hit at the weakest point, which is why headstocks break. When they get a hit here, it doesn't take much to snap them. It's sort of gently clamped and suspended off of the floor of the case. So this is our Gretsch Streamliner guitar. So before I smooth this all out and make it look pretty, I thought I would show you the relief cuts, string to string, what I needed to do to get this guitar, which is a 24 and 9/16 inch scale, 11 to 48 strings at concert pitch. And these were the values that I needed to cut into that ledge to get this thing to play perfectly in tune. And I'm happy to demonstrate that for you as soon as I get it all smoothed out and glued into place. So I'll start at the bridge. Although the bridge itself is super tight, the tolerances are perfect on the bridge posts. The actual string saddles were pretty schlocky. They were moving around quite a bit. So I got them lined up. I did breeze through the 3 bass strings to open up those slots a little bit so that the larger diameter string sat solid in a pocket. And the reason you do that is to increase the strength of the fundamental note. So the other thing that I did was I basically flooded the threads with blue Loctite liquid nylon just to firm them up. So they're still adjustable, it's just that they're not slopping around. Both pickups were way too close to the strings. I dropped them down to the appropriate height. And then we dressed the frets end to end. And there were multiple places, as you saw earlier in the video, along this neck that needed to be corrected. So there were a couple of things that really kind of caught me by surprise and made me realize that the pickups and the potentiometers on this guitar were kind of a last-minute afterthought, I think, on Gibson's part. This is a windscreen for a microphone they use for the battery, which is ingenious, but it's not exactly high production. These were the original pots, and you can see that that shaft is actually pulling out. And when I turned them, they were cutting out a bit. But what really bugged me was all 4 of these pots were actually turning. The reason for that is the CNC'd holes for these 4 potentiometers were made for the full-size regular Gibson pot. And they had jimmied this up, putting a couple extra washers on there to try and tighten it down. Well, it didn't work. So I did end up putting 4 brand new pots in there. They're all rock solid now. No more issues with the actual potentiometers turning when you adjust the knob. I did put a little slip of insulation over that bare wire because what was happening, and again, this is why it makes me think that, you know, to a certain degree, this guitar model was kind of a bit of an afterthought, is when you push down on the battery, the ground wire was actually touching the center lug of the pot. So I'm just going to put that right back together. And we'll go in the house and let you hear this guitar. We've got our Zak Wylde silhouette in the back of the headstock. It's interesting how they actually sprayed that in cream. There's your custom shop label there. So the side of the headstock, the back of the headstock are painted that cream color, and then they sort of bring it to a point here, and then it's just maple all the way up. I guess that's what Zak wanted. Yeah, this guitar, by the way, weighs 11 pounds. So moment of truth. Let's go through our set of verification chords. So here's our Major 9, first position. A minor 9. Exact same chord, an octave higher. It's a G minor 9. So we'll lay down a chord progression to sort of blow over, and then I'll flick the pickups around on this, and you can hear it. So I've kind of looped that. Exact same chord, an octave higher. It's a G minor 9. So here's a bunch of first position chords. Here's another opportunity to compare two different compensated nuts. So this one is 11 to 48 strings tuned a half step down to E flat. And this Gibson guitar, same scale length, 10 to 48 strings tuned to concert pitch. Both of these guitars now play flawlessly, perfectly in tune, end to end, every fret, every note, every chord. Even though this is tuned down to E flat, well, I've made the adjustments in the bridge and the nut to accommodate that E flat tuning, 11 to 48. So both of these guys can kiss any tuning problems goodbye forever. And here's a moment of truth with the Zak Wylde guitar. We'll go through a few chords. Here's I know that Jeff isn't too likely to do a bluegrass tune on this guitar, but just to make a point, anyone out there that's got a Les Paul, pick up your guitar and try and play these three chords, G, C, D. You got to remember, this guitar is intonated for E flat tuning, so it's not concert pitch, but it's relative pitch. So all the chords and all the positions, let's just go through a typical D chord, which is in reality, in this case, D flat, but we'll play it in several positions, and again, pick up your own Les Paul and try this. So there's your first position D chord, and that F sharp on the first string is always out of tune. You've got to actually tune that string down for it to be right. Not now, it's perfect. Okay, so G chord, of course G flat actually, but there's an A major 7, C. Another sort of sequence of chords that I've used in previous videos is just taking that garden variety C chord that everybody plays, right? Play it in the 8th position, which ends up being a G chord. Move it to the 3rd position. 1st position. So that is where we ended up with for the compensated nut on this guitar. This is 11 to 48 strings regulated for E flat tuning. Okay, while I'm at it, I've got Don's ES-339. So this is the compensated nut. So I'll go through similar sequence of chords here, and you can hear for yourself. So if you want to check the accuracy of the tuning on your own guitar, try playing these chords. Just a simple G, C, D in the 1st position. So we'll go through our D chord. Now this actually is D. And here's that C chord sequence that I just demonstrated on that Zak Wylde Les Paul.